Hey everyone, welcome to Judging for the Win. I'm Dave, and this is my daily ruling. Today's question comes to us from the True Stories collection, and it actually happened at an event that my colleague Mark Mason was judging. Thanks to him for relaying this question along to me. Nick plays a dress down during Amy's upkeep. Amy then attacks with Alpine Watchdog, but she does not tap it. A spectator calls for a judge, and you come to the table. Unfortunately, you don't get there until after Nick has declared blocks. What is the appropriate infraction, penalty, and fix? Okay, so the first thing that I always stress in these types of policy questions is to identify what's the first point at which somebody did something that was against the rules. In this case, that would be when Amy attacked with her creature, but did not tap it the way that she needed to. So that's the first time that someone did something against the rules, and that one falls under a game rule violation, which is basically just like a catch-all infraction for any type of gameplay error that does not fit into one of the other neat categories. So this is specifically the one that we're going to give to Amy. However, Nick also is going to be getting an infraction because Nick did not notice that Amy committed an infraction in a reasonable amount of time. Ordinarily, the infraction that Nick would be getting is something called a failure to maintain game state, which is basically not noticing that somebody did something against the rules. However, in this case, there's actually something a little bit more specific that we can give to Nick. That's because Nick controls the permanent that makes it so what Amy did was against the rules. If it wasn't for Nick's dress down, then the game state would be perfectly legal based on what Amy has done. So that means that Nick is going to be getting something a little bit more specialized. As you can see here, the situation we have fits pretty close with this line in the IPG, and that indicates that Nick should be getting a game rule violation also. The default penalty for a game rule violation is a warning, so each player is going to be getting one of those. Now, the fix is also really interesting in its own right. There are two policy-supported fixes for a game rule violation of this type. You could either leave the game state as it is, or you could back up all of the game actions that have happened up until the point of the error. The thing that makes it really interesting here is that neither one of those options has a clear win over the other. This is one of the reasons why I think these True Stories collections questions are so valuable. Especially for policy, there oftentimes isn't going to be a clear answer based on the game state that you encounter as a judge. Whereas for questions that are written, there oftentimes is, because that's the way that they're written. So in times like these, what we need to do is a little bit of investigating and a little bit of critical decision making to see exactly which of our options is going to be the best play here. Like I said before, neither leaving the game state as is, nor having a backup is going to be a perfect solution, so let's evaluate the pros and cons of each. So for leaving the game state as is, the strongest pro is going to be that this is the least obtrusive option. Remember that we would be backing up everything that's happened in the game up until the point where the mistake happened. So that means that if any combat tricks were played, for example, we would be undoing those. This has the potential to really change what each player does because they'll now have more information about what their opponent has been doing and what their opponent has access to. And another thing that complicates this is that the players probably aren't going to just volunteer the information that someone played a combat trick. But of course, it is going to be important to your decision as a judge, which underscores the importance of asking them questions like this when you're making these determinations. Especially for stuff like this, the players probably wouldn't even think that this information would be relevant because, after all, it doesn't have anything really to do with the question that they originally asked about. So, that would be for leaving the game state as is. Now, for backing up, the pros would be that it has the potential to get us a lot closer to what the game state is. Remember that our ultimate goal here is to enact the fix that gets us closest to what the game state would be if there was no error committed. And of course, if you have a creature that's untapped, whereas it's supposed to be tapped, that's not going to be exactly what the game state is supposed to be. So backing up is the only fix that gives us the potential to get up to the game state that we're actually trying to hit. Now, based on the stuff that we were talking about before, it doesn't mean that the cost that you would have to pay in order to do that is always going to be worth it, but this is definitely an important thing to consider. Knowing which of these factors is the most important to weight in your decision is something that comes with experience, format familiarity, and investigation skills. However, without any more knowledge about what's going on in the game, I would say that right now I'm probably leaning towards backing up based on the information that's been presented so far. Now, in regular rel, we've got all that same complexity, except there's one extra decision that we would have to make. Because the fixes aren't so rigidly defined in regular rel, we also have another option, which is to come up with something that the judge thinks is more appropriate. So if neither of those feels like the best thing to do, maybe you could consider doing something else. Like, for example, just having Amy tap the creature and having the game progress from that point. That's another option you would have at regular rel, and remember, as a judge, it's up to you to figure out which of these options makes the most sense. But that's all I have for you today. How did you do? Join me again tomorrow for another daily ruling, but until then, I hope you have a great day.